that was the end of his explanation.
Well, AAA music is heavy on the singer-songwriters and the Americana, but we also include blues music, jazz, other styles like world music.
It's not the same songs every other hour. And in 90.5's case, it's not even the same songs each week.
WCB is pretty unique with all the variety of music that we can play and the variety of shows that we have.
We've had John Prine, Ziggy Marley, Warren Haynes from the Allman Brothers. We have had Tedeschi Trucks. The list goes on and on.
The thing that we have at WCBE is experts in music that know where the good stuff is.
Homemade, locally produced programming is what we're all about, and just sort of sitting there and grooving out in a radio station, knowing that I'm doing the same thing with thousands of listeners across the state. I really dig that. I dig that sort of concept.
We're all over the map. It's great music. You know, people that go, oh, I listen to everything. If you listen to everything, all you need to do is listen to us.
Dun, 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 dun. Tommy Emmanuel, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Maggie.
And Accomplice 2 is out now. You didn't think you could top the other Accomplice album,
tried.
but it's pretty special as well. But we're
Thank
thrilled
you.
to have you here today. And
Thank you.
We've got a lot to talk about, where it all started, this latest album, the show tonight with Jorma Kaukonen,
Yeah, indeed.
who we adore as well.
Yeah.
The show's tonight at 8, and we'll have a pair of tickets to give away for the event tonight. Details at kappa.com. It's also listed on our Facebook events. Tommy, what are you going to start us off with?
I thought I might play one of the tracks from the new album, and this is a song that I wrote as a dedication to Merle Travis's son, Tom Bresh, who passed away last year. He was quite a cannonball. That guy. He was a comet flying through our lives, like Travis was, I guess. So I tried to write this tune, and it kind of with a typical Merle Travis flavor. But then when I got to the bridge, it visits Stevie Wonder or someone like that, you know. And that's because I'm from a different generation to Merle Travis. But on the album, my buddy Richard Smith plays all the harmony parts. So today I'll have to do his part as well. So here it is, Son of a Gun.
How do you do it?
It's all smoke and mirrors.
Tommy Emmanuel joining us live from Studio A, and it's a track on the latest album, Accomplice 2, Son of a Gun, with Richard Smith. And tonight's the show, 8 o'clock, with Jorma Kaukonen, two separate sets, and they might get together.
We do.
For or during
I
Tommy's
haven't
set.
seen Jorma in a little while, so it'll be nice to catch up with him. And, you know, he's been a great friend to me.
When did you first play together?
When I came to Fur Peace about 15 years ago.
Amazing place.
Yeah, maybe even more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, tell us about some of these other all-stars that you got lined up here. It's a 16-song track, so amazing people on here.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't need anyone but yourself, but you have nice special guests on here.
Well, yeah, it was real serendipity how this album came together. I recorded it all last year, and I had one of the busiest years of my life, and so did everybody else, because, you know, since we got over COVID and we're back out working again, everybody got busy. But it was just really fortunate, you know, people like Billy Strings and Molly Tuttle and you know, Jorma's track and Little Feat, Nitty Gritty, all those people. Everybody's touring, but they just happened to come through Nashville, and I was able to get them in the studio, you know. Billy came in and we cut the Doc Watson tunes the first take, and then he left, and then Molly came in a little later, and we cut her track first take as well. You know, the artists of that level are that good. You know, you get a good sound on your guitar and on your voice, and you can just do it. You know.
And speaking, you mentioned Billy Strings, of course. He goes through a lot of strings.
He does. I'm sure.
How about yourself? I'm sure you do too.
Well, I played a show last night in Grand Rapids, and it was raining cats and dogs, and it was really humid, and I thought my strings are going to be dead and everything. But they sound pretty good. I'm road testing some new Martin strings.
So the thicker or thinner? I'm not a guitar player.
Oh, okay. My strings are 12 to 54 is the gauge. It's called light gauge. Okay. But most people who play electric guitar would go, oh my God, how do you play guitar with such heavy strings? But when you play acoustic, you've got to get some kind of kickback, you know, from the string. Like you can still get that kind of vocal singing sound, but in order to do, say if I was going to do something like 16 tons or something, I'd want that honky tonk bottom end, like the bass sound from those strings. So you need them to be big and tough kind of thing, you know. Yeah. So, but they sound pretty new today, right? But I thought they were shot to pieces after the show last night. But it must have been my hearing that was shot to pieces. Welcome
to WCBE.
Thanks for having us.
We've got this. We're happy to have you here and talk about this new album, I'm Okay, No I'm Not, where it all started in Cincinnati, Ohio. She's Nashville-based now. And we'll get warmed up with a song and come back and talk all about that and give some tickets away.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. What are you going to... what's the first one you're going to do?
We're starting with 8 Hours, which is off of my first record.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Let's do it. Drinking again, I'm feeling foolish, 'cause I thought she would quit. Is it something I did? Something I did. My best friend and I don't talk anymore. One day I woke up and it felt different. Is it something I said? Or something I did? Can we pretend that everything's alright? Like none of it keeps us up at night. Can we pretend that everything's alright? Like we're getting 8 hours. 8 hours of sleep at night. Signed the papers, they're calling it quits. They said it was easy. Was it easy? 'Cause their little girl came up to me and said, Mommy's moving out, but she'll be right back. Oh, so don't tell me that's easy. Please don't pretend that everything's alright. Like none of it keeps you up at night. Please don't pretend that everything's alright. You look like you got 8 hours of sleep last night. I'm one to talk about not pretending. I'm one to say you should wait it out, but the truth is I haven't said what I meant in so long. I just pretend that everything's alright, like none of it keeps me up at night. I just pretend that everything's alright, like I'm getting 8 hours of sleep at night. I just pretend that everything's alright, and like none of it keeps me up at night. I just pretend that everything's alright. I wish that I got 8 hours. Oh, 8 hours of sleep at night. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Good evening, everyone. Today is June 11th, and I am calling the Equitable Transparent Resource Management Committee meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Ms. Adair?
Present.
Mr. Davis?
Present.
Ms. Pope?
Present.
Ms. Burrell?
Present.
We do not have a quorum.
We do not yet have a quorum. We're hoping for another committee member to join us. So we will skip items in the agenda that do require a vote, but we will go ahead and talk about presentation and information items. So on our agenda today, we have 3 reports in our committee operations agenda. The first is around the realignment overview and discussion of our committee's responsibilities. The second, we are going to hear from our adult ed program, and the third, we will have a presentation from our internal auditor. If there aren't any objections, we'll go ahead and approve that agenda. Okay, seeing no objections, it will be approved. Okay, before we do that, though, I do want to just take a moment and recognize our treasurer's office, which consists of about 60 people. They once again have earned the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting from the Association of School Business Officials International. It's a big deal, and the team works so hard. So I just want to take a minute to congratulate them once again, and we are certainly will recognize you guys at the board meeting too, but it just came out today, and we just learned about it, so want to give our team props. Mr. Rush, do you want to say anything about this?
Thank you. It is a team effort. It's the team that makes it happen.
and they work hard and tireless all year round to make sure that we get all of our ducks in a row, make sure that we're achieving what we need to do in order to earn this award. I believe we've now earned it for a quarter century, maybe plus at this point, consistently year over year. And so it's because of the great folks that we have in our office that make this a possibility every year. And I can't say enough. They're amazing, and they're the ones who really deserve the accolades.
Yeah, and the award is for our annual comprehensive financial report. So again, presenting that, giving all the information, data, transparency, all of that, that's what's winning the awards. So, so thank you again to the Treasurer's Office.
And if you ever want, it's a lot of great information in that particular report. It's not great bedtime reading, but unless you're trying to fall asleep, in which case it's really good bedtime reading. But it is a lot of great data in that report. If you're ever looking for information, it's a great first place to start.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we are going to go into our first agenda item, which we are going to have a update. We did send out to the committee the footage, or asked you to watch the footage from the board meeting where the superintendent did lay out the entire realignment strategy and timelines. So in the interest of time, we're not going to redo it, but we are going to talk about highlights of that apply to this committee and to the work this committee will do, which really will ramp up this fall and as we start the realignment process. So I'm going to turn it over to, I think, Russ and Alex to lead us through this. And we will, like I said, tonight is really just about starting the dialogue. Over the summer and during our break, we're going to talk about, we'll come back get ready for the fall to have more detailed information about what our actual steps are going to be going forward. And so tonight is about learning it, looking at it at a high level, gathering your questions and feedback, things that you as committee members would like to know and understand as we get ready to make some of these recommendations to the board. So trying to level set here. And if you didn't get a chance to watch the full presentation, I really hope that you do take the time to do so later. Okay, Russ, Alex, over to you.
Good evening. Chair Adair, members of the committee, happy to be here this evening, and members of the public, happy to be able to present this as well with Alex. Today, we'll give just a high-level view of the footprint of the district in terms of our academic footprint. I'm going to focus mainly on the realignment of Broadway and Moeller because they're the ones that are coming up really, really fast here. And then I will hand over to Mr. Trevino, who will go through the remainder of that until we get to the call to action piece, and then I'll step back in at that point as well. So just high-level facility footprint. We've got 112 buildings across the system. They're spread across the system quite widely. Some numbers on those. Of those 112 buildings, they have 8.3 million square feet of space. We're built out for about 60,000 students, and we have about 47,000 students currently. So we clearly have more square footage than perhaps we need at this point in time. And to be honest, our square footage is pretty darn old. We've got 46 buildings that have been involved in some sort of FMP work that has caused major renovations to them, but that leaves 66 that have not. And of those 66 buildings, our oldest one was built in 1895, and just for a frame of reference, about 1895, that's when X-rays were discovered. That's when the first commercial diesel engine was produced. So a few things have happened between 1895 and the present, and clearly how we wish to provide instruction isn't aligned to spaces that were designed at that point in time. Yes.
Before you go forward, I'm just curious, and Alex may have told us previously, but I don't remember. Which building is that?
That's Hubbard, isn't it? Oh, Alex dipped out. I believe that's Hubbard. But we have more than one building that's in that
West Broad
1890.
is pretty up there, too.
Yeah, West Broad, Everett is up there. We've got a number of buildings that are right around that turn of the century mark. Of those 66 buildings that are left, the average age is almost 70 years for them. And we've got, as you see, we've got 9 buildings that are in excess of 80 years. So we, in addition to having much square footage, a lot of that's old and very hard to maintain and very expensive to maintain for us. And certainly doesn't align to the type of instructional environment that we think our students need and deserve as we move forward. So, the board recognizing that committed to a realignment, and the most immediate piece of that realignment involves Broadley Elementary School and Moeller Elementary School. These are both facilities that were not part of the FMP. And so as we're moving forward, we're talking about moving students from older buildings, 50-plus years, into newer buildings. I believe Moeller, yeah, both of them are over 50. Moeller's just a year younger than me. So, as we look at that, again, both these schools are intended to close at the end of the, well, maybe we're going to work. We were working. There we go. The 25-26 school year, with students going to the new schools in the 26-27 school year. You'll notice that the schools that are intended to receive Broadway's students are Eastgate, East Columbus, and Fairmore, all FMP buildings, all buildings that were renovated in the 2000s. Maybe this is going to cooperate. Moeller, similar, but going to Livingston and Lincoln Park. Again, both FMP buildings, both renovated, both have space, both can accommodate our students. The most immediate thing that's coming up is a boundary process. So, we came to this process recommending to the board through a task force. They had recommendations. The board did some additional homework on that, and then landed on 5 buildings that they wanted to close. I think that process, writ large, looking at the city as a whole and having representatives around the city who make those sort of decisions, makes sense as a city-wide conversation. But when we're talking about boundaries, we're talking about neighborhoods, and I think the people who are going to be impacted by that need to be involved in that process. They're the ones who are going to have to live with it on a daily basis, and so we want them engaged and involved in deciding where those boundaries will be and how these communities are going to be reallocated in terms of the residents to the new schools for that. So we have set up a process. We're going to work with Cropper GIS, and thank you to the board for approving that contract last meeting, because this is something where we want some expertise to help us with this, and folks who have done boundaries quite a lot around the country. Cropper is a Columbus-based company. They've done boundary work all over the country, but also in our neighborhood. They're engaged with Dublin right now. They did Akron Public Schools. They've done a number of boundary processes in the state of Ohio, like I said, many of our neighbors, and I've worked with them previously in another district. This is their niche. This is what they do. So in this window of August to October, we're going to engage with Cropper and the community to define new neighborhood boundary zones for these schools. That process will involve some public engagement sessions. It will involve a work group that works separately from that. Cropper will work with us to develop a web page with interactive maps so people can look at what the proposed changes will be. And will become an information repository for this work as we move forward. This has to happen between August and October, because by November, we get around to Wellness Week. We need to inform parents. We need to have a letter in parents' hands saying, hey, this is where your child's going to attend by neighborhood, so that parents know that, so staff knows what's going on, that, again, we can begin to engage with staff where they're going to go. And we can also then have folks know ahead of the whole lottery process, so that parents, hey, I know that my child's going to go to X school based on address. I'm not real happy with that. Maybe I want to do something else. I can lean into the lottery process at that point. And we are offering a preferential lottery for families that are going to be impacted by these boundaries, which means they'll have an opportunity to have a lottery first. They'll get considered first, and they'll have those results by mid-March. We expect at this point. Again, we'll work with the representative planning team around this. We'll make sure there's linguistic support for folks who are involved in that process as we move forward. And again, we're going to have, again, both online and in-person opportunities for that. In addition to the work about the residential area, we have a lot of students who attend these schools who are there because of placements for services. Either they're receiving special education services, and this was the location for that, or they're receiving support services for language. We have a fairly large set of students for whom English is not their first language who attend broadly. You know, one of the and if you watch the overall presentation, one of our sort of principles that we're using to guide this work is we want to serve kids. Kids shouldn't have to travel across town to receive services. We want to serve kids either in their home school or as close to their home school as possible. So if we have a group of students who are in a self-contained special ed unit, what would make sense in terms of placement for that unit? What would be the closest school to that cluster of students, and can we move that unit to that school so we minimize transportation times and improve student experience for that? Likewise for ELL, there's no reason why we can't try to get more of those students served in their home school. And if we can't serve them in their home school, again, looking for sort of the centroid, what's closest to that group of students, and seeing if we can't serve them, again, in their community, most likely at least within their high school region, so that we're serving them closer to home. So my wife is a second language learner, and so this one I take personally, and you know, and I know the importance of leaning into that experience to try to improve it for our students. So that process started this year for some students at Broadway. It will continue in the fall, and that involves a lot of phone calls and individual interactions with parents about those decisions and how we're moving kids, whereas the other will be more global. Again, we'll have surveys, et cetera, to support that work as we move through it. Throughout this process, and I know this is not the engagement committee, but I'm going to ask you guys to think about this all the same. We have some commitments. This was part of the plan that was presented to the board last week. There's a whole section on the community engagement process and what we want to do. I've outlined the immediate piece, but right after we have the residential piece outlined, then we have to start talking about joining schools. What does it mean to bring school communities together and bring them together in a way that they can be successful? So I think what we've heard, we had some focus groups with parents from both Broadley and Moeller to inform that plan as we went through it. What we heard sort of consistently from them is communication, communication, communication. The more I think it would be hard for us to over-communicate in this process. So if you all, this is the ask, if you all can help with that as we're going through this, to work through your social networks, et cetera, to help people be informed as we move through that, that would be incredibly helpful. We don't think a single opportunity for joining schools is going to be sufficient, so we want to have multiple chances for students and families to experience and connect with their peers and the faculty and parents at the other schools. One of the things that emerged as being very important for many folks was to memorialize buildings too. As we close them for instruction, you know, generations of families have often gone through these buildings. So how do we honor that? How do we memorialize it? Part of the plan actually includes an SOP for memorialization that includes connecting with the Historical Society for gathering and keeping that information. Finally, the overall goal in this is to build trust and a sense of belonging amongst the students and families as they move to their new schools and get them connected. And so what you'll see is literally month by month an intention to afford an opportunity to connect, be it small group sessions, be it a shared lunch, be it the holiday activities, opportunities, again, meet and greets, all the way up to back to school piece where we would afford opportunities again for folks to connect with their school and begin to have receive supplies, et cetera, to get them connected with their new community. Really do want to lean into this space to support these families as we make this transition. While as a system we can recognize that we have too much space, while as a system we can recognize that buildings are older and that we really would like students to be served in newer facilities, it's still hard for families. It's still hard for kids to make this transition. And so, you know, we want to honor that and be very thoughtful and try to engage with the families throughout that process. I think I'm handing things over to Mr. Trevino at this point, and I might add, this thing needs a pretty hard tap to make it work.
All right.
Good evening, everybody. So we'll start with just, again, overview, and I won't belabor this slide, but I will point your attention to the right side column and the kind of two categories we gave for our vacant structures. So there are the vacant structures on unused sites. So these are sites which currently have no CCS program presence on them. And then the vacant structures on active sites that all have some aspect of a program still operating. And I'll get into details on these as we go through each of the sites. The one thing I will point out here, though, before we get into the detail is Maderi, which is the building I would call the outlier. So that is the one site that does actually still have a facility on it. Not planned for demolition. It's a historic facility. So as the board thinks through potential disposition for property, these are just some of the attributes, some of the questions that we thought are kind of relevant to put in the context of what future use for some of these sites might become. Of course, there are still ORC restrictions on how that property gets disposed of, and yet we think these are good questions that should be considered. So number one on an inactive site is the Monroe site. So you see it's just over 9 acres. Just kind of some relevant context, just to the west of this site, just out of the screenshot here is the Fort Hays campus. The big white roof you see at the far right side or the east side of the site is our Trevitt Beatty Park Elementary School. And while it's a fairly small footprint, if you look immediately north of our site, you'll see the shadow lines of what was Sawyer Towers, the now vacant residential towers right there along the freeway as well. Next inactive site is the Beaumont Elementary School site. Many people forgot this name because the Beaumont School closed many years ago, but it was more recently occupied by our Columbus Spanish Immersion Academy. You see it's about 5.5 acres. It's on a very residential site, completely encircled by residences. But Morse Road is to the north, Cleveland Avenue to the east. Again, here's that Maderi site. It's bounded by Hudson Street to the north, and Indianola Avenue is about a block to the east. Again, this is the one site that still has a structure on it. It's a 3-story structure with a 1-story addition with a gym and a couple classrooms. Just under 42,000 square feet, very tight site, 2.4 acres. And while there is some commercial properties along Indianola Avenue, otherwise it's pretty much all dense residential neighborhood just north of the OSU campus. The next inactive site is the Pinecrest site. So the building at this site was actually demolished, I think maybe 12 to 15 years ago. So this site has been inactive and basically just a green space for quite some period of time. You see it's just over 7.5 acres. And again, it's completely encircled by residential properties. And then this takes us to our active sites. And I'll maybe spend the most time talking about this one just because it is a little bit of an anomaly. So what you see outlined in red is the totality of that site. I've never seen this on another parcel, but this is the way the Franklin County Auditor's website shows it. So it's 19.2 acres combining everything you see there. So at the north end of the site is our Eakin Elementary School. And so immediately south of Eakin Elementary is Eakin Road, versus at the far south end of the site is Briggs Road, which is where our facility master plan Wedgwood Middle School sits. And then that yellow arrow is pointing towards the facility that is slated for demolition and which the board has already approved, which is the old Wedgwood Middle School site. But again, it's the totality of that site, which is 19.2 acres and still has 2 active school sites on it that we don't foresee changing for the foreseeable future. Deschler Elementary is the next vacant site. You can see it's bounded by Deschler Avenue on the south and Lockbourne Road to the west. It's a fairly irregular site. You can see that red boundary kind of juts in and out, following the residential parcels that are to the north and the south of it. Immediately east of it is a city park, which is Deschler Park. You can see our baseball and softball fields on this campus. So these are off-site facilities that support South High School, since the main campus there does not have sufficient acreage to support those facilities. So we don't see that changing anytime in the near future either. When we've demolished this building, there will be a small parking lot to support having students transported over to access these facilities, but you can see that there is certainly the potential here to do something with some of that space that'll be freed up once that school building comes down. And I will just point out, this site is actually actively under demolition as we speak, so. Next active site is our Linmore Education site. So my blue arrow somehow slipped off where it's supposed to be a little bit, but at the far west side of the site, you see kind of a square building that's kicked just a little bit. Just to the right of the arrow is the annex, which will remain. It is currently being leased by the Metropolitan Libraries as a swing space. The yellow arrow is our Hamilton STEM Elementary, which was renovated 2 summers ago. And so then that larger facility at the south east corner is the Linmore Middle School building that will be demolished. But again, you see the total site is 22 acres. But again, much of it will be in use still by Columbus City Schools, including behind Hamilton STEM are a baseball and softball field which support Lyndon McKinley. And then the next site is the Franklin Annex. And so the yellow arrow there points to the Columbus City Preparatory School for Girls, which will remain. It's the facility at the northeast corner which will come down. It has been vacant for many years. I'm not entirely sure why that facility is on this site. It has not been in use as long as I've been with the district. So you can see there is certainly some potential to do some development on this site, but this will remain as a Columbus City School site for the foreseeable future. We're just under 11 acres on this site. And then that takes us to Beery Middle School. And so the yellow arrow now is pointing towards that facility that will be demolished. Although this one is one of the later buildings slated for demolition because it is currently still being leased by the Metropolitan Libraries as well. If you're familiar with that Lockbourne Road corridor, you know that they are actively in construction on a brand new facility that will replace their kind of temporary site here. I think it's slated to open at the tail end of 2025. And so once they have moved out, and exited the space, this building will come down as well. Board has already approved that demolition and the contract for it. On the northeast corner of this site is our current Marion Franklin High School, and similar to the other sites, we don't expect any significant changes there in terms of us operating a high school, so this will continue to remain an active site. And that will take us to integrated master plan. And so just kind of want to level set with some basic statistics about the district's history of facilities and master plan. And so I always like to remind people that, so one of the kind of defining factors that has kind of put us in the position we are in right now is that because of declining enrollment, from the periods of 1977 through 2001, there was no significant construction of any kind in the school system other than maintaining. So we have this enormous gap in kind of the age of our buildings. Which has kind of put us in this predicament where we have very old buildings and then we have very new buildings as part of master plan and this enormous gap in between. And then in 1997, the Ohio School Facilities Commission, now the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission, was formed, which set the kind of baseline for school construction as well as provided state funding for construction, which really kind of sparked school construction across the entire state. And then in 2000, Columbus City Schools passed its initial facility master plan with the 2002 bond issue that funded the first 2 segments of work, which I'll give you a little bit of detail on those on the next slide. It wasn't until 2004 that the first of those facilities, which was Linden STEM up on Cleveland Avenue, opened. And then in 2008, segment 3 bond issue was approved, which allowed the next 12 buildings to get built as well. So that original master plan contemplated 7 segments of construction, and I'll kind of show you those segments on one of the latter slides as well. The state agreed to a 70-30 funding split, which means that local taxpayers are responsible for coming up with 70% of the cost of approved construction, and when the local taxpayers are able to, or the board is able to meet certain goals set by the state will provide 30% of the funding. In 2002, that first bond issue raised $392 million locally to bring in that state share. And in 2008, the bond issue brought in $123 million to fund that segment 3. Fully acknowledge you will not be able to read this graph on the right, but I still like to show it because it really kind of highlights when we say that these facility master plans need to be living, breathing documents. They really do change sometimes almost in real time. And so if you can see, there's 7 columns there, and those represent those 7 segments of work. So segment 1 is the one that shows up in that kind of pink light red color, and you'll notice that there's 2 blocks of gray that show up across it. And what that indicates is that this was a period when there was pretty significant declining in enrollment, and so a number of facilities were closed. So any facility you see marked out in gray are facilities that were closed due to declining enrollment. And so you see there was a small impact on segment 1, but you see an even bigger impact on segment 2, and then 3 and 4, which we did not build out yet. But I'll also point out that in segment 2, that second column, you see there's 2 shades of blue. And so that darker shade of blue is just indicating changes to buildings that were, so the buildings remained in segment 2, but they were changed. And so what was happening is that while buildings were being closed, and so those buildings were removed from the larger plan, other buildings were increased in size to kind of make up the difference. But again, so some of the changes are large, like closing the facility. Some of them are more minor, like increasing its capacity to deal with other issues happening. And then if you look at the third column, segment 3, you'll notice that everything that's shaded in green is what was actually executed as part of segment 3. So you can see segment 3 was not anything like what was originally contemplated back in 2000. And so again, it's just a story that we really need to be thinking about these plans as being very dynamic plans, and that we're, as quickly as we can, adapting to any changes that we know are occurring in the community. This is just a plan that shows you, so each of those gold stars are the 46 buildings that were either newly built or renovated as part of master plan. And probably what this points out to me most starkly is that while we were following a worst case condition model, you'll notice how little construction there is at the far north end of the city. And so then as we restarted the master plan work in 2021, or I'm sorry, 2021 and 2022, a different approach. So as the district was initiating its portrait of a graduate, really thinking about how we like to use the tagline, instruction should drive construction. So rather than being focused on enrollments and capacities, really thinking about the instructional programs. What are the pathways, what are the supports we really need to support students to make sure they can be successful? We can design those buildings any way we need to be able to support instruction. And then a couple of the hallmarks of the state rules that we have to comply with if we want to get that 30% funding. So the state has told the district that they will not support building a high school that has a capacity of less than 1,200 students, a middle school of less than 800 students, or an elementary school of less than 600 students. We can go larger than those thresholds, we just can't go smaller, not if we want that 30% state match. And then a couple other relevant things. So the state operates by what they call the 2/3 rule. So I can tell you from our current condition, most of our buildings would qualify for replacement versus renovation anyways, but at the point the renovation costs exceed 2/3 of the value of new construction, the recommendation is to move to new construction. And then just to kind of give you an idea of where we stand right now. So we are actively in contract negotiations with a firm that was selected through a qualifications-based process to lead our new integrated master plan. What you see there are the value of that 2021 contract. So it was just under $800,000 and took about 16 months worth of work. And so I just kind of wanted to put that out there in terms of kind of what you should expect to see. I expect that our new contract is going to take slightly longer than that period of time because, again, it's just the concept that it's an integrated plan, so it's going to be looking at more scope. Oops. Don't touch the touchpad. So it'll have this similar planning efforts of what we've had previously, but I'm expecting that it'll have more and different engagement. We'll also have things like educational visioning. So again, when we go back to that portrait of a graduate and thinking about programs, like what does that really mean? And helping our community, our staff understand, you know, you can only get into so much finite detail at kind of the broad level planning stage, but really helping each community think about what needs to happen inside a building for us to be successful. And then again, we'll be looking at all the funding options to make sure that we're leveraging all the resources that we have at our disposal to make sure we can actually excuse me, execute on the plan. And then just some other things that we really need to be keeping in mind are the Senate version of House Bill 96. And I won't belabor any of these points, but I think you're all aware of what's currently being contemplated and how those changes may impact our facilities as we move forward.
And before we get to questions, like on that kind of final piece that you said, I wanted to see if Dr. Roush wanted to say anything from the treasurer's perspective regarding what's happening right now in the Senate.
So the Senate has passed its version of House Bill 96 today, so everybody strap in. We're getting ready for conference, which should begin next week. There have been a number of changes through the various versions. They've added some language around demolition, where if demolition costs more than $10,000, then we have to go ahead and offer those facilities first to community schools, chartered non-public schools, and I believe in the Senate version, ESC facilities. So we keep adding the list of entities that get added to, that we have to make an offer to. However, there are exemptions if the school is, Alex has pointed out, if it's either contiguous to or sitting on a parcel already an active site, that would be an exemption. The unused facilities piece has made some tweaks. A lot of that you see up there is there. The CTE programs were exempt, so that is good news. That is, there's an exemption for career tech programs. They're using the previous 3 years, looking to see if, if the enrollment is less than 60% in those previous 3 years. For the governor's version was 1, Senate sub-bill was 2, the omnibus that came out yesterday and what was just passed is now the 3 years, so that will certainly provide some relief. But I believe it is fair to say that there are several facilities that would meet these definitions. There's also provision that allows the district to appeal to the director of the Department of Education and Workforce for extenuating circumstances, and that director has to make that determination within 60 days. So I will say this, there is a great bit of difference between the House and Senate versions. Some difference between the governor's and the Senate's version. So this will get hashed out in conference. It will remains to be seen what the final version will be, and it could be something yet entirely different.
Thank you for that. Before I, again, open it up to questions, I just want to remind the committee, first I want questions on everything because I think it helps the team. But some of the questions will be directed to maybe our other 2 committees on this stuff. So we have our Academic Facility Alignment Committee that will be working more on, the superintendent's portion of this about the actual realignment and the boundaries and what, and even with the future building of buildings, what academic programs and what things of that nature. Our Community Engagement Committee obviously helps us go get feedback and engage our community. And we are then focused on more of the resources and how to get the resources, and then in terms of development of our assets and maintaining assets. So we will focus on questions about what do we do with the property, the land, how do we get the money to build. So all of the questions are important, and so I want you to say the questions. It just might be that we shift the question over to another committee, but it helps our team kind of gather because you are all valuable members of our community, and that is why you are here. And so we definitely want to hear all the questions. You all have a list of questions that have already been started, and so we will kind of keep a list like this too to make sure that when you all do have questions, you can send them in by email even before the meeting, that they are answered, because that's why you are here. So I just wanted to highlight that, again, we are going to be focused on the land and what we need to be doing with that. We started conversations about learning about how to fund school buildings, and then we're going to have to figure out when we come back in the fall prioritization of what properties we need to look at first, especially in light of what's happening at with the House and the Senate right now with the budget bill. And so we have a long list, not just the schools that the superintendent is working on right now to do realignment, but as Alex highlighted, with the demolitions that the board and this committee recommended. So we do have some right now, like Monroe and Beaumont, that will come down and they do not have active sites on them. So those will become a priority about what we need to do with those sites. And so we'll work with our engagement committee. We might have to send things over to the other committee, but that's kind of how the workflow is going to go. We're all working on this, all of our committees together. We all just kind of have very finite pieces to discuss. So with that, I want to open the floor up to questions. We have Alex, we have Russ, we have Eric who's here to answer any questions you all have at kind of the 1,000-foot level, knowing that in the fall we're going to take a deep dive and actually start to work on some of these properties as individual projects and prioritization. So I'll open the floor.
Can I make a comment really
Yes.
quickly? Just 2 points that I failed to mention earlier, and I think Alex's slide had it on there. The Senate version does revert back to the governor's change from market value to value for educational use, which will have an impact upon what we will be able to bring in for these unused school facilities. Likely lower. How much lower, I think, yet remains to be seen. And then just so by way of so everybody's aware that when we do sell these facilities, under existing law, and none of this is being changed in the budget bill, the proceeds of the sale of those have to go into the permanent improvement fund. So we can't use them for general fund purposes. They've got to go right back into permanent improvements to go towards those various capital expenditures.
Thank you for those updates.
Will the outcome of the bill have an effect on schools that the board has already approved for demolition but have not yet started? If it is passed, does that then change the way that we'll have to handle that, or does that only apply to ones that that would come up, that the school board would look at after?
So the change in the demolition language is a permanent law change, so it would take effect 90 days after the governor signs the bill. So we're looking sometime in the late September. So long as action is taken prior to September, is my understanding. I'm going to say is my understanding because I'm not an attorney, and I certainly never want to get in trouble for practicing law without a license. But my understanding in that would be yes, so long as the action is taken prior to the bill taking effect, we're fine. But anything after that, we would have to go through that new process.
And by action taken, you mean something has started for the demolition, right? Not necessarily
That would be
has
my
finished.
understanding, yes. Just because we may have indicated something is the case, I believe that once, we'll say October 1, for the sake of argument here, takes effect, I think Beery being a good example, if we've not started any kind of demo on Beery, I think there's a very good possibility that we will then have to offer that facility up for sale to a community school, to a chartered non-public school, or to an ESC, and there are various typologies within that in certain timeframes. This is going to be about a 6-month process to really even get through the offering stage before we can go to that next phase. And now they're requiring us to go to public auction. And then if it doesn't happen at public auction, I believe at that point we can do a direct sale if nobody bids on it. But if we go to public auction, then yes, we will now be required to sell it, whereas currently we have the option not to do so.
And I don't think it's Beery, though, because Beery's on a site with a...
You're right, Beery is okay because it's on a school with Marion Franklin. Probably the best example I had, because I think it's the only one that he said is going to happen later. So yes, thank you for that. It is on an existing site, so not Beery, but say, well, here's a good example.
Well, the ones that we're closing.
Broadley and Moeller, both, neither of which are contiguous, neither of which are on a site. We will have to, before you demo them, or even because they'll be unused, we will have to offer them for sale or lease to a community school, chartered non-pub, or ESC.
And that's the McGuffey building where because eventually we don't have that's a longer timeline, but all these that we've been talking about that the board voted on, and Buckeye will be kind of in that same boat where they would then become sites with vacant buildings with non-existing school use on them.
Correct.
And be subject to the new provisions.
This may not be a question that's appropriate for this meeting, but does this rule about selling or leasing at least ensure that that we don't have to do that if we don't get fair market value for it? Is there,
Well,
what does that look like?
The law changes.
Or is there a way to look
Well,
for
it
it?
changes from fair market value or market value to educational use, which is going to lower what that particular amount will be brought in. So we'll get an appraisal. Let's say the appraisal is X. So long as they bid at X, we have to sell it. We don't have an option.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question on the leasing side of this.
Yes.
I definitely been following actually HB 96 and watching as it evolves and changes, which has been interesting. But the leasing part, I'm not quite as clear on. So, is there a floor for the lease? Because certainly it seems unfair for us to be forced to lease a school for like $1, right?
I don't believe that there's. I think that is going to be an interesting question because I'm not sure how the lease provisions are going to work. I don't think you have any better. Alex can tell you what we do currently with a lease. But
Yeah, I don't-
going forward, it's going to change greatly.
Yeah, we'd have to dig into that one a little bit. I don't.
I mean, currently, I believe we're allowed to be market rate. Correct.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
But going forward, I think that is going to be a very good question as we proceed.
Yeah, because I think what I'm most concerned about when I hear about the forced leasing is the forced sale, you know, definitely unfortunate, definitely don't agree with it, but at least it's a one-time transaction. We have the capital, we move on, right? But the forced leasing to me seems very much like something that if we're not able to advocate for a fair value that allows us, I mean, the reason that we're exiting these schools is because we can't maintain them. So now to tell us that we have to force lease them, I feel like we need to make sure that we can fight for a lease value that includes renovating the school, right?
The decision to lease or sell is up to us. I mean, we have the option to
Okay.
offer it for lease rather than sale.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong at any point here. But we have the option to lease rather than sell. If the goal is not to try to lease it, or it's not a condition we want to try to do, or if they change the rules around leasing where it doesn't make a good value proposition, the only reason you keep it as a leased property is just so you can maintain the asset.
Sure.
And so it really comes down to, do we want to continue to try to maintain that asset longer term, knowing we're going to be leasing it to someone, or do we want to try to just divest ourselves of it at whatever value that may be? A lot of decisions, and I will say this, like anything that's new legislatively, there'll be a lot of discussion around it, probably some potential rulemaking around it, and if I had to venture to guess, probably somebody wearing a black robe at some point will make a determination on what we can and cannot do.
Yeah, I would just add, I think the most difficult thing to anticipate is, I mean, a sale transaction's pretty cut and dry. There are so many potential variables to how you would structure a lease that I don't guess any House bill is gonna address all of those aspects. Like, you know, there's the actual annual lease rates, but is it a triple net lease? What's the length of the lease? Like, obviously, as a tenant, you'd be willing to make certain investments for a 10-year lease versus a 1-year lease, and I don't know that it'll speak to any of those things, so.
Right.
Fair.
Yeah, and then if we're in a situation where we had to make an upfront capital investment to keep using the property and then they leave the lease, right? Like, that's a situation. Mm-hmm.
And they actually excised the language that the House had inserted, that would have, at least if a community school at all had purchased the building and then sold it for a profit, the profits were deemed to come back to us at that particular point. That language was excised in the Senate version.
Are there other questions?
Yeah, so one thing I think like at a 1,000-foot view, yeah, I printed off a lot of things. Also, I'll just take full responsibility for these questions here. So can you help me understand, like, how many schools are at risk, do we think? I mean, I know it's kind of hard because you have 3 different versions of this effectively, but do we have a rough idea of how many schools with the latest, there it is, with the latest version of this? Because I read this today, and I got to say, I have no idea what they mean by this.
So, again, it's not carved in stone quite yet, and so we're struggling with this. We have a lot of buildings that are around that cusp point, some of which are FMP sites. So, for example, Eastgate is an FMP site that is below that threshold. Now, fortunately, we're having a boundary process, and we'll be able to allocate students from Broadley to Eastgate. You know, we're doing the same thing for Lincoln and Livingston. We're making advantages of those spaces. I worry about Ohio, for example. the relatively new school in a community that's experienced a great deal of gentrification, grossly underutilized. We've tried to move some programming in to help with that. While, just across the way by Moeller, we've got Fairwood, which is ancient. And so, I think this committee may want to look at what we can do to preserve sites once we have an operational definition, and how we might prioritize some additional realignment to take advantage of these modernized facilities the community has already invested in. If I had to pick on which building I'm going to sell between Fairwood and Ohio, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. Yeah, and I think you really hit, at least for me, the nail on the head of, when I'm looking at thinking about continuing to plan and figure out the future of this district, I look at this and I go like, this is a really unfortunate timing for that, because we just may not have the time for some of these buildings, right? Like, to your point, I think it's absolutely crucial that we don't lose buildings that we've already invested in.
Well, and, again, I had a bit of a call to action early on around, hey, we're getting ready to do these boundaries and involve the community. There's an opportunity here, again, to advocate and help connect people. There's still some room to advocate on this bill as well.
That's right.
And had this bill gone into effect a year ago, it would have precluded the solution of moving Broadway to Eastgate. And so I worry about foreclosing options for us in terms of flexibility, swing sites, et cetera, to be able to do what we need to do to move towards an integrated facility master plan over time that, incorporates, closures, realignments, new construction, renovations, as well as capital improvements to buildings. They tie our hands and take away flexibility as we move through this. So there's room for advocacy there.
The bill's not done until the end of June, whether that's June 30th or June 46th.
I know that we have talked a lot about the school buildings, but this property too is impacted. Our admin sites are also wrapped up into this language too. It's not just school buildings. So, we've voted to do something with this property, and so we'll be working on that too. So that gets added to our list as a committee as well. I mean, it was already here. We've been working on it. But just remembering that of the 112 buildings, some of those are admin sites. And so we have to think about that as well. They don't have this obviously student utilization problem, but in terms of, us being able to consolidate or realign our adults so that they can work better, we're going to end up with having some properties that are open that we must consider what to do with as well. So we're looking at all types of property. Okay, any other questions? Again, we will do, we have so much work in this area, so rest up over our recess, and we will come back in the fall, and this will be part of our continued work through the next school year. So thank you all for that discussion. Thank you, team. All right, we'll go ahead and move over to understanding funding for adult education. We have our director, Ed O'Reilly, who is also retiring, I understand, from our district. So we're so glad that you're here to give us this presentation. It used to be for our finance committee, we would always hear from our self-sustaining programs, and you've heard, this committee has heard from others. We've heard from WCBE, we've heard from Latchkey. We didn't hear from food service, but I don't think this year. But we wanted to make sure that adult education got some time before us too. And just like a lot of our programming, with what's going on, with funding and federal grants and all of that, are also experiencing a challenge. And so we want to understand that, because we know the value of this program to our community, as well as thinking about it as a possible future revenue generation for our district as well. So that's why we're here, and I'm going to turn it over to our director, Ed O'Reilly, to tell us about adult ed and what's going on around finances.
Thank you, Chairwoman Adair and members of the committee. My goal tonight really is, I think you're going to hear some things that you know about adult education. You're going to hear some things like, wow, we really do that. You're going to hear that we're impacting a lot of lives, and I think you're going to conclude that we can impact many more. So my name's Ed O'Reilly. I am the Director of Adult and Community Education. And just, less than 20 years ago, there was a building called North High Adult Education, which was the central part of adult ed. That is now Dominion Middle School. But there was also Northeast, Northwest, Southeast, Southwest Career Centers that we used in the evening for a variety of career-based programs. And at that time, those properties no longer even exist. They've all been sold out. And when they did the renovations for East High School and Lyndon McKinley, Adult Ed was asked to vacate North High Adult so that could be used for swing space. And we moved into what was formerly known as Hudson Elementary. So we're about maybe a half mile south of Cause on McGuffey. So it's a smaller building and limits what we can do, but we get a lot accomplished there. So we've been in that building for quite some time. At the time, we were told we were going to move out for 2 years and then move back, but that never occurred. It became International High School for a time. Okay, I'm hitting the button. Not sure I'm doing this right. There we go. So why do we exist? We exist for a lot of reasons. One of those main reasons is there's board policy that says you will have an adult education program, and you will make sure you work on the vocational technical needs of the community, and you'll have a robust program for students who need to complete their high school graduation who didn't do it while they were here. Historically, there's been programs on and off since 1827 in the adult ed world. Closed down a couple times during war, but pretty consistent presence in the district since that time, and brought into the fold as a department in 1966. I'm going to share numbers with you. You're going to be surprised what we do with 39 staff members. You really have to hit that. So yeah. When we talk about adult ed, we talk about it in terms of there's two sides of the house. Aspire is a state and federally funded program that is really for students to earn their high school equivalency or learn English as their second language. The great thing about high school equivalency is it's really grown. Most people say, oh, GED. Well, it's not just GED anymore. Ohio's been fantastic in really thinking and being creative in ways of allowing older students to complete high school. So I know you see in board agendas every 2 weeks, there's a slate of students who are getting their diploma through the 22 plus. So if you live in Columbus, regardless of where you complete your high school credits, but that program, you complete your credits, you have to get your testing that was required at the time you went through high school, then we issue a high school diploma to those students. Probably the biggest game changer, though, is what's called adult diploma. So it doesn't matter when you left high school, how long ago, what credits you had, what testing you passed. If you come to us and you can pass what's called the work keys test at a level that says, I have some skills that I will be successful in the workplace. And then you work with us to earn a 12-point industry recognized credential that says, not only do I have skills for workplace, but I have specific skills for your workplace. Those students will then get a state-issued high school diploma as well when they complete those two things. So that has been a game changer for somebody who's 40 years old saying, I left my freshman year. There's no way I can go back and get 15 credits. Well, we have this pathway for you. And many times, that's the pathway they need because employers want you to have your high school diploma. We're also getting them that with a skill set that says they're job ready. So it's just a fantastic program.
Really quickly,
Mm-hmm.
Are those diplomas typically accepted if someone wants to go to community college or wants to go to college?
Absolutely. They are, the 22 plus are Columbus City School high school diploma. The adult diploma is a state-issued high school diploma.
Okay.
So it's not an equivalency, it is an actual diploma. So wonderful programs. And then on the other side of the house, well, Aspire, those programs are free. We get grants for those, free for all who attend. On the workforce development side, those are our tuition-based programs. Most of them are considered post-secondary. We offer, students can be eligible for Pell Grant, federal financial aid, to participate in those programs. So our big one's practical nursing. Here's one of those things that I said you probably didn't know. We have had a practical nursing program for 70 years. Not 17, but 70 years. It's been around a long time, and it has a wonderful reputation. We also do certified nursing assistant. Several years ago, and this is fledgling and it's just beginning, but we have a commercial HVAC program, and our placement into jobs has been terrific with that program. That one's offered at night at Fort Hays. And then we have a variety of other certification programs, and I didn't put them all on the list there because it changes. We work with business and industry partners, and they come and say, hey, this is real important right now, and we'll work with them to construct a program that'll be helpful to their workforce. So we can turn things pretty quickly when we have the community partners who are working with us. So those are all great programs. Just some demographics about who we are. Oh, I hit it on my computer, not here. Okay, there's got to be a trick. Oh, there we go. When you start looking at the demographics and you look at the large number of people we serve are between the ages of 25 and 44. So these aren't necessarily, 17, 18-year-olds. These are people who are like, I didn't finish, but I want to finish now. Or, I'm working in a warehouse. I want to do something different. I'll go to school. I'm going to become a practical nurse because it changes their lives. But, a large ESOL population, very diverse. The entire program is extremely diverse. And then in our tuition-based programs, 92% of those students are eligible for some level of financial aid. So they're getting Pell Grants, they're taking student loans, direct student loans, to pay for the programs. All right, so Aspire program. Like I said, the largest program we have. We're serving 2,000 students in Aspire right now. When you look at that, it's important to understand that our students come for 2.5-hour blocks twice a week. So we can have a morning, afternoon, evening, and we do evening classes both at our site at Hudson, and we also do some evening classes at Centennial. So we serve a lot of students with a few staff. Classes are busting at the seams. There's a waiting list. There are students that we have to tell every term, sorry, we're full. And there are other Aspire programs in town, they're all full as well. So they wait till the next term and then we get them in, but they're waiting 4 months. And oftentimes we lose, students are interested now and 4 months later something else happens and they're not coming back. So definitely a capacity issue on that. But the main programs there are the ESOL program and the high school equivalency. So again, the HSE and the 22 plus and the adult diploma. We're very proud of the number of students we serve, and we are in the top 3 number of students served in the state of Ohio. In the workforce development, roughly on average, we're between 175 and 200 students who come through our workforce development programs each year. Roughly 70 students each year graduate from practical nursing. And you'll see some stats about the placement rate, but it's out of this world. I mean, these students are coming in, they are learning how to be practical nurses, and they're getting hired. So in the skilled trades, the HVAC is a brand new program, but when students leave there, after 1 year, they're Monday through Thursday night for 3.5 hours. After 1 year, they're leaving with 7 different certifications, and they're extremely employable at that stage. So we just started this program. That's kind of our toe in the water, so to speak, as far as what we can do with skilled trades. I think there's obviously room for growth there, especially in the way Columbus is growing right now, to start looking at electrical and construction as well. Our current certification programs, we have phlebotomy, customer service, Microsoft Office, broadband, which is a good story too. This was entirely state-funded. They gave us all the equipment, provided training for a teacher. They're paying the tuition for the first cohort. And on Monday, our first 12 students are graduating with broadband fiber optic repair skills. It's been a great story to tell, and we're really hoping we're going to be able to continue that program. And a new one we're just starting because their need is certified billing and coding. So like I said, we get approached, hey, there's some need for training. We're pretty good at putting programs together for that. So where's the money come from? It is almost all entirely federal and state funding, and I'll show you a breakdown. Roughly, if you add those two together, it's roughly a $4 million operation. About $200,000 comes from the district. Everything else, comes from the federal and state funding. So, what the district does provide, they provide us with building. They pay the utilities, and they provide our 2 custodians. Important to note that as part of the Aspire grant, which I'll show you the numbers behind that, there is part of that Aspire grant that says the district has to have some portion of financial responsibility. So that's where that comes in, is, they're helping out to meet their obligation for the Aspire grant. But it's a sizable operation.
Are any of these funds at risk with all the changes happening at the federal level and the state?
Well, unknown, I guess, is probably the best. And when you look at, if something happens with the Pell Grant Program or the Federal Direct Loan Program, then yes. I mean, that's could be a big hit for us. There's been some talk about some changes in that, but nothing solid yet. But if you look at those first 2 lines, those are tuition-based students taking out over $1 million. The last line talks about how much students pay out of pocket for tuition as well. So there's another $310,000 coming out of pocket for tuition. If that number were to increase on the bottom because the top numbers decreased, we'd have a problem, because our students do not have that money. We get very creative in helping students find the funds for schooling. Perkins is a federal, that's federal money that comes through via the state of Ohio. Perkins has been around for a really long time. Hopefully they don't mess with that funding. Some of these other grants, Center for Training Excellence is an Ohio grant. That one is likely, at least in the current budget, going to be cut by about a third. We get, $70,000 to $80,000 a year. We can expect that to be cut. And what that money does is it really provides a staff member to be a link to the business community. The business community can reach out and says, here's something I need. And we either consult or design and help them put together programming that meets that need. So we're really working closely with business there. The Aspire Instructional Grant's the biggest grant. It's, this year 1.7. That's what funds those 2,000 students. Now, if you think about, you do the math on 2,000 students and $1.7 million, we're doing this at $900 a student in the Aspire program. So, we have great staff people who really work hard to make this all happen. The adult diploma program, that's been a godsend, like I said, for both us and for our students. Essentially how that works is when the student completes that program, we get reimbursed by the state. So when we say the students pass their work keys, they have their 12-point credential, then there's a reimbursement for that program. And so we will probably make, by the time we take out our expenses, we'll probably make $100,000 on that program this year. It's very powerful. The Talent Ready and Work Ready grants are some, you say minor sums when they're, $40,000 and $50,000, but what that allows us to do is a student comes to us and says, I really want to be a certified nursing assistant, but I don't have the financial means to do that. We can provide that money through the Talent Ready grant. and basically cover their tuition. So we do have a lot of ways to help our students who are in need access programs. Rapids funding is all equipment. There's only 32 for this year. Last year I got $200,000. Tomorrow, about $75,000 training unit's going to be dropped off at the HVAC lab for not only for adult students, but for the high school students as well. So the state's helped us out greatly with that. And then we get a subsidy. We're formerly known in legislation as the Ohio Technical Center. So there are about 52 of us in the state, and we fall under that in Ohio Revised Code. And so we get some subsidy money for that. But, you know, essentially, we're self-funded as a program. Okay, so what are the results for this? In the practical nursing, you know, 84% are, there's a national test. Anybody who's going into nursing has to pass a national test in order to be certified. First-time passage rate for us is almost 84%, which is one of the highest in the state. We have a really good practical nursing program. And almost 95% of those are taking jobs right away in nursing. If they're not taking jobs, more than likely they're going right back to school to become a registered nurse, which is a program we would like to add, but we simply don't have space to do that right now. HVAC is fairly new. We've had 10 completers. You know, we're still growing that program, but we went from 3 students to 7 students to now 15 students. So that is gaining in popularity, and it's a good program as well. And we have 43 students earn digital literacy certification, 17 earn Microsoft Office. You know, so just some of those side things that we do that you know, either business or students, there's enough interest, we put a program together. And then we had 66 graduate from practical nursing and 24 earn their nurse aid certification in this current year.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
And this might be more for our deputy superintendent. So throughout this, and because you're on the workforce, this is why I want to pause here. I know that, you know, in the superintendent, you know, kind of spoke about the realignment and how we're going to be working towards career academies, which is really about workforce development. How are we integrating the adult with the K-12 model? Because, like, I hear it a couple times, like, we're sharing the resource or we're doing it on the same campus. And I guess, I'm sorry, as we continue to talk about this, you know, this kind of shift to career academies, how are we incorporating adult ed?
Yes, so I think, honestly, you answered the question as far as where we are right now. Lots of co-location, continuous collaboration between Director O'Reilly and Director Jenny Mead to make sure that what we hear from our community about workforce development needs, that we are meeting where we can in the school day, and then certainly making sure that those programs are uplifted in the evenings. Now, going forward, what you can expect to see is a very much an integrated plan, so that as we're identifying the career academies, the pathways that will be located in the career academy high schools, those programs will be able to be very responsive to the community. So right now, I would say there's some limitations that based on what adult ed, and Director O'Reilly will talk about some of those limitations a little bit more, but much of that has to do with space and staffing. We offer a large number of programs in career technical education during the school day for school-age students.
And I think both the broadband and HVAC are good examples of how we work together. Broadband is at Downtown High School. We work closely with Director Willis on that and setting up that classroom. There's some discussion going on about how can we train a high school teacher to do some of the same work during the day. And HVAC, we're in their lab. I mean, there is direct cooperation and coordination with the high school program and with Jenny and the teacher there to ensure that any equipment we bring in or they bring in can serve multi-purpose for everybody to use. So it's been that's a good way to model a program if we continue to grow in that way.
Is it a fair assumption to assume that your program typically needs to offer things on nights and weekends because adults are not going to be available during the school day?
Yeah, the nursing program is 8 hour a day for a full year, and that's at our Hudson building. I'll talk a little bit about the Hudson building in a bit, but after that and with the Aspire program upstairs, that building is packed. So basically from morning till evening, there is no more room in that building. So yeah, during the day, we're kind of at there's nothing else we can really offer at that stage. So yeah, so then it becomes the evening programs, and everybody we've asked has been great about allowing us to utilize their space. So, but yeah, it's very limiting. Right?
Yeah, I guess what I was really trying to get at was, like, if you had the space, do you feel like you could fill it during the day as well?
Yes.
Wow.
Most, like, for example, a large number of our practical nursing students, will you please start a registered nursing program? We love this program. We'd rather do our registered nursing with you. And our answer is always, we have no place to offer that. But yeah, we could certainly grow program.
Okay, it's good to know. Yeah. Especially as we consider the future. That was the part I was really curious about.
Yeah, I mean, with what's going on in Columbus right now, the sky's kind of the limit of what can be done. Well, I shouldn't say that because there are some limiting factors I'll tell you about, but we'll get to that in a couple slides here. One of the things I think is really worth noting is how many high school diplomas we've issued this year. When you add up the numbers, I think it adds up to 197. I would venture to guess if we don't have the greatest number of high school graduates in the district this year, we're in the top 5 of all the, when you say how many people graduated, probably, if I remember correctly, Briggs is one of the bigger schools. How many graduates do they have? We had 197. That's a big number. So we're extremely proud of that. And when 147 students who were in the Aspire program are now in post-secondary in 1 year. So they're not just stopping with us. They come to us, they relearn that they can be successful, and they keep going. And then 665 of the adult ESOL students had educational level gains. So that's something that the state measures. We have to do pre and post testing every 4 months, and those students have to show gains. We get a report card like everybody else does, and we're doing well in that area too. So, I mean, both workforce development side and Aspire side, and if I didn't mention Justin Smith, who runs the Aspire, and Patricia Harris, who runs our health occupations, I'd be remiss because they do wonderful work. Ooh, now it took off on me. Okay. So some of the things we've done in the past with the school district, just to point out that we just don't focus on the students who come our way, but we try and integrate with what the district's done. We've worked with the Department of Transportation, so we help put together instructional resources for their CDL permit training program, I think they're being fairly successful with that program right now. With food service, we provided ServSafe manager training. So you have to have that manager training certification in order to be a cafeteria manager. So in the past couple of years, we've helped 25 people who are working the cafeteria line to become managers. And then we also provided paraprofessional test preparation classes. So people said, I'd like to be a paraprofessional. Well, guess what? You need to pass a test to do that. We provided preparation courses for those. So we're trying to integrate our work with what the district's doing and not only grow Columbus area residents, but grow the district employees to fulfill needs of the district. So we're very proud of that work as well. Just, just two things real quick that a couple people have said, and one is a quote from a student: "In less than a year, I earned my high school diploma along with my STNA certification. I did not think I could get into this place, and I'm so grateful to all the staff." And then this is from an employer, which I think speaks well of our program. "I can overwhelmingly say that the LPNs from Columbus School of Practical Nursing enter the workforce prepared, with a good foundation of the various tasks that are expected of them upon graduation. This is one school I personally frequent when looking for additional staff members." We have a job fair for our nursing program every 4 months, and employers are asking for a table at the fair. I mean, our folks are getting, like 95% are getting hired as soon as they graduate, so we're really proud of that. Okay, so what are some things if you're looking to help? What are obviously physical space. We have 10 classrooms. And when you start talking about all those students, my building has 10 classrooms and limited office space, 3 large classrooms for the nursing program, because at times they're, they can be between 25 and 30 students, and they have a lot of equipment. It takes a lot of room, but 10 classrooms, and we're doing over 2,000 students. The other thing, when you're in the K-12 world, and there are 2,000 students who move in, the district figures out, okay, well, we're going to put some funds there, we're going to hire additional staff, we're going to do this. We can't operate that way. We have to take a look at, okay, in fiscal year 26, what are the grants that I'm going to get? What's my projected enrollment in nursing program? And then I have to use that number and say, we have to do this with this many staff. So if there's a waiting list, there's a waiting list. If somebody has, I can only handle so many students because we don't have that, hey, Dad, I need more money. We don't operate that way. It's here's your budget for the year, and then I set my staffing, and that's kind of where we are unless we find additional grants or resources. So we could serve more students. The state Aspire grant is only going to give us so much money because it's spread through lots of other centers in the state of Ohio, and we understand that. Columbus Promise. A lot of money goes to Columbus State through Columbus Promise. It's a wonderful program. It'd be awesome if students can access our nursing program and our HVAC program to come right out of high school, go to those. In a year, they'd be in the workforce. And that's a great pathway. But right now, those students don't have access through Columbus Promise for our program. And then just one, it may sound minor, but when we bring in safety and security, we have to pay for it. I don't know how many other departments in the district have to do that. Our location is such that in the evening we want safety and security. So right now our Aspire grant is paying for safety and security Monday through Thursday evening, 3.5, 4 hours a night. That's money that could go to instructional materials. But right now, we feel that's important to have that person in place, and we do pay the money to do that. But it does come out of our grant. And a great picture of one of our nursing students with our nursing supervisor. And just thank you for listening.
Thank you. Before I open up to questions, I want to say that, the adult education program and everything that was just talked about is amazing for the adults, and we know that it helps our community and helps, our whole community be more stable, but it directly goes to our goals and guardrails as a district because it supports our whole child. So when our adults are more stable and can finish high school, they can advance in their career, they can earn more money for their family, that makes a more stable house, it makes it a more stable community, and that means our kids can come to school and do better because they are not stuck in that Maslow's hierarchy. And so, adult education, all of the things that were talked about today are really important to the overall mission of our district. And so, that's why it's so important that we talk about it holistically, because, in the end, it's going to improve our student outcomes. So I'm going to start with the first question, because I had to remember where your building was, and I pulled it up, and I'm looking at it right now. Can you remind me, is this an old elementary school?
Yeah, old elementary.
Okay,
It was
that's
Hudson
what I thought.
Elementary.
That's right.
It's a 1960s building.
I'll open it up to committee members. It was just so amazing.
Yeah, I don't have any questions, but thank you. I just want to say thank you for giving all this information. This was super comprehensive, and like as I had questions as you were going along, you answered them pretty quickly thereafter. So thank you, and congratulations on the great work that you're doing.
I think that, in consideration again, and, Martin brought this kind of up a little bit in his question was, we heard the need for a possible additional space, different location, a building maybe made for actual bigger people, and so as we think about, our facilities, which was the conversation we started the evening with, thinking about this, the programming, the way that they're going to interact with K-12, and really making sure we're building this out in a very intentional way. And so we can kind of make sure that we are supporting adult education, not just through support of financing and, what we can do and advocate for at the federal level in terms of grants at the state level, but also thinking about where you are located and what actual building that you have. And making sure that you're supported. Do you want to say anything in particular more about that and the building and your needs? Because that's the work of this committee, would be to kind of figure out how to help with that, and especially, advance things over to the Academic Facility Alignment Committee if it is about, integrated programming.
Well, it's some location, but it's size. You're just when you have 6 classrooms for your Aspire program in the upstairs wing and 3 downstairs for the nursing, and then we use one for a skills lab, has all the nursing mannequin or the patient mannequins set up in it. Somebody comes with a great idea and you're like, I'd love to do that, but I have nowhere to put it right now. That becomes the biggest limiting factor. Especially in that first time of the day, when we offer our first set of classes from 9 to 11:30, our ESL parents are dropping their students off at elementary and hightailing it over to our place, because that's a period of time where they may not have childcare needs and they're coming to school. Our evening classes are a lot smaller because they can't leave it. They can't leave their children at night. So having, especially in that time frame, if we had more places, and and then it becomes a question of staffing too. How many staff can I put in that 2.5-hour time period? But that's a huge time for us, and it's really childcare based.
Interesting. Have we explored the solution for that childcare need in the evening program? What, if any, conversations have taken place?
So I and a couple other people have been in conversations with Festa. I don't know if you know who Festa is. So I've had a lot of conversations with their director. And for those who don't know, Festa is a 3-generation ESL program. Right now they operate in, I believe, Hilliard and Dublin. And it's an evening-only program. Drop off children, very young, middle school, and then the adults. And they have classes for all levels, so parents are comfortable dropping off their students and moving up. So we've had some conversations, and the last conversation I had was, Festa, if you can find a place during the day where you can provide the child care, we might be able to provide the teachers. But that was the last conversation we've had with them. But so yeah, we're looking for that type of solution. Be nice to partner with somebody, because we're not set up for childcare. But yes, that's the biggest hurdle for our adult learners is childcare, just like it is with work and other things in their lives. Thank you for asking.
We aren't really set up for childcare either, but we are set up for early education. And so again, maybe, again, just expanding and thinking through, like, what is it our whole families need in the ELL space? As you're right, they're all becoming English language learners, really no matter their age. And how do we support that whole family through their educational journey? That's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. Other questions?
Are they coming from all over the city?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking through with CODA, right, and some of the new fast transit lines that CODA's putting in. One of the things that's immediately coming to mind is trying to see if, as we do realignment, I think that's another question in my head is, so if we were to move classic, K through 12 students out of a building, would we be able to put a program like this in a building without having to?
Yeah, it's be our use, our educational purposes.
Fantastic, yeah. So that definitely makes me think, like, as we talk about realignment and moving things around, seeing what buildings are going to be near some of those mass transit lines, because that would definitely help parents who have a very limited time window to get there.
Right, and to piggyback off of that, a lot of the new CODA mass transit buildings have daycare centers in them.
Oh.
That could be a drop-off and a go, and then come back, pick up the student, go home.
Wow, that's interesting.
Okay. Other questions? All right, well, thank you so much.
Certainly. Thank you.
All right, and we will turn back over to our, Mr. Williams, did you have something?
So we down for quorum. I didn't want to change the agenda or not.
I will at the end. We just have to adopt the minutes, and we'll do that really quickly at the end. So, yeah, we do now have a quorum. 2 more of our committee members joined us. So we're going to go into item 3.3, which is the presentation of our annual audit plan from our auditor, Mr. O'Connor.
Right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I won't take that much time, but I did have a presentation. I always like to start off with the internal audit definition there for everybody. It's an independent, objective assurance and consulting activity designed to add value and improve an organization's operations. And those are the 2 keys, to add value and to improve an organization's operations. That's our focus. So I'd like to start with that and just go over, refresh people's memory about the deliverables. We started this path of excellence a couple years ago, and our focus is to add value, cover governance, control, and risk, effective and efficient operations. And our points of emphasis are communication, collaboration, and building relationships. And really, I think we've done a nice job, if I have to say so myself, with reaching out to people and having them reach back to us on ways we could assist them. Our deliverables are audit reports.
Sorry, do you have your slide advancer? I think you're
I
advancing,
do.
but we're not advancing. There we go.
Thank you. There we go. So our deliverables, audit reports, which again go over the annual audit plan, which is planned work that we do each year. We have special audits, so as things come up during the year, they might have somebody leave a process and somebody would like that process reviewed. They might reach out to us and we would schedule that review. So that might be an area where we would do a special review, or if there's just a concern about an area, we would also schedule that. Again, we try and stay on a risk-based approach. So again, when we have concerns come up from people, we try and evaluate the risk and make sure that we're addressing the riskiest area. That's what that last bullet is. Agile projects, this I think is where we're really covering some good ground. So if people have new processes in their departments, they might call us and have us part of the team. Not that we can make any decisions, but we might be able to identify some risk that they may have, and we can alleviate those risks right at the beginning or outset of that implementation, rather than waiting to come in and do an audit on the back end where it's already operated and these risks have led to some exposures. Same with procedure reviews. walkthroughs, if they've had a turnover in staff and they just want to see, is that process still working like it used to work? We would come in, just do a quick walkthrough. The nice thing about the Agile projects is we don't have to do a lot of planning up front. We can just jump right in, do the project, and provide immediate feedback. So it doesn't have to go through as much for standard reasons as a regular audit would. And compliance checks will be the other thing that we cover as part of Agile projects. And then just some of the other things we do, the COOP, continuality of operations, meeting with segment leadership, legislative reviews, and committee involvement. To just go over the process pretty quickly, we start with a risk assessment, and that December date, that's when we officially begin our risk assessment for the next, not calendar year, but the next fiscal year. But our risk assessment, through our interviews with board members, leadership, management, employees, things that we've just come across as we've done other reviews, that all goes into our risk assessment. Once we risk all the audit universe items, scores pop out. And then we take those highest risk scores, and that's what we build into our annual audit plan. Now, there might be some that might not be the highest score, but it might be something of significance that leads to a goal directly, so we would want to include that. So we do make a few adjustments there. The audits that come out of that annual audit plan are normally have 1 or 2 audit objectives. And because again, if we start getting into 3, 4, 5 audit objectives, it's going to take us 8 or 9 months. And when we've done audits like that, by the time we give the feedback, the information we looked at is old and it's not as valuable to management. So that's why we've tried to really limit that 4 or 5 months at the most for things like that. And I would like to call out a thanks to Dr. Chapman, Mr. Cook, and their staff for reaching out and involving us when they do have questions and collaborating with us, because that makes teamwork really good. So let me get to the annual plan here. Okay, so we have 2 rounds. We have 5 audits in each round. Right now, we probably have the staff to complete 8 audits, but we have 10 on the schedule because we're going to try and use a partner that we've used, another accounting firm, to help with a couple of the audits. So you'll see round 1 is going to be from September 1st to December 5th. Those are approximate dates because, again, it just depends on management, what's going on with the district. We can't be in there if they're doing testing and things, so we'd like to, that's why you'll see a gap between December 5th and January 5th to try and give us a little bit of room. But that's state and federal grants management, labor management and employee discipline, environmental health and safety, IT would be the educational technology services, and student enrollment. Those are the audits we'll be doing in the first round. The second round is student transportation, literacy, whole child supports, IT information systems and applications, and talent. Now, I want to let you know, this is what is planned right now. I'm in the process of meeting with the leaders of these areas to make sure it's okay to come in during this time. I know student transportation, we don't want to be there in September. So I know to put that one in round 2. But it's very important that we're coordinating our work with leadership and management to make sure they will have the staff available to assist us in doing our work. So it might change a little bit. We might move one from round 2 to round 1 or vice versa, depending on what management has to say about that. And again, this was just approved by the board at last board meeting, so that's why it's the way it is right now. And for each one of these audits, just to go a little bit down, what we do is we used to say for talent, we used to give you exactly what we were going to look at for our talent work. The reason we don't do that is we may have done our risk assessment of that area 3 months ago. By the time we get to round 2, it's now 8, 9 months ago. So we like to revisit that risk environment to make sure what we're actually planning on looking at are still the critical needs in that area. So we have risk drivers right now penciled in for each one of these that we'll start with. But it's very important that if other risks bubble up, that we're not ignoring those risks. We want to make sure we're providing the value. And then we meet with management also as part of this process. So once we come up with the revisit of the risk environment, we meet with management to see if there are any things that are keeping them up at night or any areas they would like us to focus on. Not that we take away the risk drivers we believe are there, but we might add something to, again, provide value to them. And then we might adjust the time frame a little bit because it might be a little bit longer of engagement. But again, it's very important for us to provide value. And then right after that, we meet with management, we'll develop the audit objectives. And those are the objectives we'll work through each audit. Just to go over the staffing. This is currently what we have staffing in our office. The blue shaded areas are currently vacant positions. And I can tell you there's 2 segment manager positions on the bottom of that are currently vacant, but we won't be filling. I went 1 year with the current staff structure, even though these other 2 were vacant, to make sure that I could operate the way I needed without those 2 positions, and I can. So those will be going back to the treasurer's office to reallocate or repurpose those positions somewhere else in the district. The senior segment manager position, all the way to the left there, that one I would like to fill, but given the current budget, it's going to be on hold right now. I'm not going to bring additional staff on right now. And the other one, the executive director spot up there, I do not need another executive director in our spot. That will also become a senior segment manager, so that'll drop down to that bottom line also. But again, same thing. Not going to fill any of them right now, given the current budget situation. We just have to see how that shakes out. And then the last slide I have is just the staff experience in our office. We have 199 years of audit experience, which averages 28 years of audit experience for each team member, which is pretty significant. We do have 2 employees with MBAs, 3 employees with CPAs, 1 employee with a CIA, 3 employees are certified fraud examiners, 2 employees certified government auditing professionals, 1 employee with certification in risk management assurance, a certified information systems auditor, certified in risk and information systems control, and certified data privacy solutions engineer. So one big thing in this office is just to make sure that we have the competence to cover the audits that we're going to encounter. And again, if we don't have the experience here, we'll definitely reach out to an accounting firm to get that experience so the district can rest assured that competent people are doing those audits. And I'd be glad to take any questions anybody might have.
Any questions?
Yes.
For the auditor?
Yeah, just one quick question. Let's go back to the budget situation on the open rolls. I mean, as large as this district is, right, and as much money as we spend, I'm really curious why the viewpoint is if you have open roles and you have needs and you have leaders that need risks assessed, like why wouldn't we put someone in that role to make sure that we're spending our money and we're not taking risks we shouldn't be?
Well, when we do our risk assessment, we score risk into high risk, moderate risk, and low risk. So we used to have a lot of high risk, and that has been minimized because there's procedures in place now. So with less high risk, we want to pay attention to any high risk or high moderate to make sure they don't become high risk.
Okay.
So I just don't believe after going through a year and the relationships we've built with the team, I don't see that as necessary. So that's the reason I just think that they could be repurposed. It still gives me the flexibility with 2 additional people to bring on. And again, if I ever ran into an issue, I just reach out to see if I can get some funds to bring in an accounting firm expert to handle or fill that gap.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the question. Yes.
Yeah, just one of those classic, I want to make sure we're not being penny wise and pound foolish. You know?
Correct, yes.
Other questions? All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, since we have quorum, we're going to jump back up to item 2.1 and approve our minutes from the May 14th meeting, which are in your packets. Is there a motion?
I move.
Second.
Are there any changes or updates to the minutes? Please call the roll.
Mr. Dare?
Yes?
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Ingalls?
Yes.
Ms. Pope? Ms. Upchurch?
Yes.
Ms. Burrell?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you so much. And with that, we just need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
And a motion and a second. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Good job, team.